these people who believes in honoring commitments. Okay? You honor commitments, but that debt is the threat to the commitments. And you got Timmy Walls out there championing what he does for veterans benefits. Meanwhile, he's part of the destruction of the economy of the United States of America. Okay? All Tim Walls' benefits for veterans don't mean anything if we can't meet our commitments. I just want to mention, too, before I leave this point, Mark Stein writes for National Review, one of the most astute observers in our country, fills in for Rush once in a while. He returned from Australia a few weeks ago, and he wrote an article describing what the Australians think about this. And he said, the Australian business community, political community, and the like believes the United States is headed for financial collapse. He said the Australians don't think we have what it takes to turn this around. He said the Australians are planning their businesses and their politics and everything under the assumption that the United States is going down. Okay? That's how they're operating in Australia. I think every one of us here is committed to proving the Australians wrong.
But you owe it to me, right? I'm just kidding. I have a question.
We're going to begin the Declaration of Independence. You owe it to me. Somehow that doesn't say quite the same way. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'd like to talk about prioritizing, but I don't quite agree with that. It's supposed to set the priorities. You know, the bank, anybody has an interest in everything.
Yes.
I guess I really prefer a flat 10% possible. Everything 10%. Because you're going to upset anybody no matter what you do. They prioritize. Schools are very important. Education has really gone down to the last 20 years.
Okay, before I go farther, I think the Department of Education is unconstitutional. Okay? I want you to know I've sworn to defend and uphold the Constitution 3 times. If you elect me, I'm going to swear it again. And I take that oath very seriously. Okay? And I'm convinced the Department of Education is unconstitutional. And if the federal government is able to and wants to give some block grants out, if it's able to, it can do that. But the federal government has no role to play in policy, okay, on education. And by the way, I talk about this too with the editors of all the newspapers. And to them I say, bring me a teacher who will say that No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, Goals 2000 has been helpful to them in the classroom. And I say to the editors, you can't find one, and they don't disagree. Okay? So this is something we're going to disagree on, because we have to set priorities, and as far as I'm concerned, some things have to be zeroed out. And I would zero out the greenhouses up in the peat bogs. Okay? There are a lot of things I would zero out. But the key is if the Congress will set the limits, and it only takes one body to do it if it's got courage, and if there's leadership. It only takes the House to do it. If the House will say, we will not agree to spending above this limit, I think you can have debates about what's important.
Well,
Yes, go ahead.
Let the department say, if you cut it in 5% or 10% across the board, let that department manager or whatever say, hey, you got to cut certain areas. Let the manager who knows what they don't need. You know, it's like the state, was it a year ago, 2 years ago, time, but wasn't there a big, budget thing, whatever?
Well, before I go farther, if that's the best the Congress can agree to, that's fine with me.
Because,
now, that's not going to be my preferred course, because there's some things I would like to zero out. But if that's the best we can agree to, I mean, if that's the, politics is the art of the possible. If that's the best we can agree to, my bottom line is you have to set the maximum on what you can spend.
I like your
Yes.
deadlines.
It has to be.
You got to have deadlines.
That's right.
And be accountable.
That's right.
And measure things. And oversight.
Right, right.
It just has to happen. I'm tired of all this wasted fraud in this country.
On those lines, let me just mention very quickly, and then I want to ask for another question. Tomorrow I meet with the editors of the Star Tribune. And one of the things I'm going to say to them, and by the way, they had a editorial on what they call the farm bill. It's really the food stamp bill. I mean, 80% of that bill is food stamps. So let's be honest, let's call a spade a spade. But they had an op-ed being critical of it. And I'm going to say to them, I agree with your criticism, but for different reasons. And my different reason is going to be that this bill is being taken in isolation by itself, and everybody's trying to make it a Christmas tree and bring home the bacon for their special interest or their community. So you can't do business that way. The process cannot work that way. You have to set a limit, that everything has to be allocated a max, and you figure out a way to live within that maximum. That is the bottom line. So you have to change the process. We need leaders in DC that will change the process. It's not that they're bad people there. I mean, politicians are the same as everybody else. But the process is such that they can't, what should I say, can't control themselves. Again, I'm trying to be as nice as I can. Bill?
Yeah, so we got a lot from politicians who are talking about, repealing Obamacare. I mean, what can the U.S. House of Representatives actually do to repeal Obamacare?
Okay, again, an excellent question. The question is, what can we do to repeal Obamacare? There are two things we have to do. One is we have to win the war of ideas. Because there are too many people today who think that it's a good program. And one of the ways, there are a lot of ways we win the war of ideas, but one of the ways we do that I will highlight, is I will highlight the extraordinary discrimination against married people in Obamacare. Now, there's so many bad things about it, it's kind of, where do I start, right? The biggest thing is simply our loss of freedom. But what the public doesn't know, and I will highlight, is, as I say, the extraordinary discrimination against married people. Let me be explicit. Two people, combined income of $60,000, private insurance, and the thing is structured so all kinds of people now that have business-provided insurance are going to get dumped on the private market or the exchange. It's set up that way. Two people making $60,000 evenly divided under Obamacare for their private insurance will pay $10,425 more if they are married, as compared to cohabiting or living in different parts of the country or not even knowing each other. Okay, there is extraordinary discrimination against married people built into the bill. I think you know the IRS used to penalize a lot of people $5,000 a year for being married. That was repealed with the Bush tax cuts, although it's not totally repealed in Minnesota. The Minnesota code still has part of that. But this is the discrimination against married people in Obamacare. Now, if this couple only makes $30,000, all right, if the couple only makes $30,000, they still will pay over $5,000 more per year for their health insurance if they're married, as opposed to not being married, living together, or whatever. Now, I want you to know, Minnesota Public Radio did a fact check on what I just told you about 2 months ago, and they call it their polygraph test, and they published their results, and they said, yeah, Al Quist is accurate in everything he's saying. Now, I told him that. But, interestingly, where could they go to verify it? Well, they could go to the Heritage Foundation, which verified all those numbers, but I want you to know Michelle Bachmann gave the numbers to the Heritage Foundation, numbers that she got from me. Interesting how these things come around. But the Heritage Foundation did its own study, and then there have been 2 House research committees that have studied the same question, and the number I quoted to you, the 10,425, that is from one of the official government House research committees. That is their number. Okay, extraordinary discrimination against married people, and let me be very explicit. Obamacare is intended to destroy marriage for the middle class. Period. That is the way it's designed. See, I've been in government enough to look for hidden agendas. And I think a lot of you know, I'm the guy 2.5 years ago that discovered this and made an issue of it. And 2.5 years ago, I held a press conference in Minneapolis, St. Paul, at the Capitol in St. Paul, and then in Mankato, and laid it all out. Here are the numbers, here are the formulas, here's the bill, take out your calculator. And everything I said has been proven to be right. So, if you want to elect somebody who has the courage to stand alone when he knows he's right, okay, look at the record. I mean, I was there all by myself in a country of 300 million, all by myself. And you know, if the left had been able to find any flaw with anything I said, you know it would have been exposed. But I could prove everything I said, and it's all absolutely accurate. Now the press wants to ignore it. Now, if the public knows about the extraordinary marriage tax in Obamacare, their view of the bill is going to go down a lot. So anyway, we have to do other things, but we have to win the war of ideas. You have to win the public relations war. What's next? The next thing the House has to do is have the courage, okay, the leadership and the courage to say this will not be funded. And here's the reply you're going to get. Well, when it passed, it had funding in it. Hey, no Congress can bind a future Congress. I don't care what's in it now. No Congress can bind a future Congress. And so the House by itself, with courage, and hopefully we won't be by ourselves, but we don't know. But the House by itself, with courage, can say not a penny for Obamacare, and the House by itself can put a stop to it. And I want you to know I am in concrete. And I want you to know the guy that carried the homeschool bill when the leadership in both parties wanted to kill it, and the guy that went before 300 million and said, this is right, this is true, and I don't care that nobody else knows it, I don't care that I'm alone. I want you to know I will do everything while there's life in this body to stop this. Because we have lost our country if we don't. I believe on the debt and on Obamacare, on both of those issues, our country stands or falls on our getting it right on both. This is not fun and games, okay? This is everything. Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. First, you talk a lot about planned economy or economic plan that Australia has.
Yes.
How would you contrast with your idea about this 5-year plan with the 5-year industrial plan that China has?
Okay.
That's the first question.
Okay, well, let me deal with that. First of all, I want to give credit to China in that China has a plan. All right? China has a plan. And of course, I'm not talking about a central planning type plan like China has, but at least China has a plan. And we need to have a plan, and the plan isn't on how we shape business, how we shape trade, where we build and so on like China does, but our plan has to be on how we get out of the way of the engines of free enterprise so that the power that is inherent in free enterprise is unleashed. And so it's interesting, we use the word plan for both countries, but we're talking about opposite things. In China's case, it's central planning top-down on how to make it work. In our case, it's how to get out of the way. Now, how do we get out of the way? Well, one of the biggest things is we have to get control of the EPA. But there's a million things, it's not just one. But one is we have to get control of the EPA. Now, let me just say a little bit about that in terms of what that involves. For example, about 3 years ago, close to that now, we found out that the Big Stone power plant that was going to be built in the Dakotas used Dakota coal, power lines into southern Minnesota, okay, including Faribault, that was not going to be built. The reason the Big Stone plant wasn't built was that the Big Stone power plant went to the EPA, the planners, here's our plan, the EPA said, well, you don't meet our anti-pollution standards. They went back, put their engineers to work, came back to the EPA said, wow, you meet all our anti-pollution standards. However, in 2 years, we're coming down with carbon dioxide standards, and you won't meet those. And so you're not going to have investors putting many millions of dollars into a plant that's going to be obsolete in 2 years. The